Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to the January 9th, 2024 Development Review Commission. The purpose of the Development Review Commission was created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, businesses, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Appeal of the Development Review Commission decision. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Development Review Commission recommendations to the City Council are not final decisions. Tonight with us on the commission, we have Commissioner Larry Tom to my right, Don Casano, Michelle Schwartz, Commissioner Barbara Lloyd to my left, Commissioner Robert Miller, and Commissioner Joe Forte. And I'm Andrew Johnson, chair. I'm sorry, Michelle Schwartz is the vice chair, and I am the chair of Andrew Johnson. With us from staff, we have Jeff Tomlevich, Ryan Levake, Mylan Pankowitz, Diana Kaminsky, Chris Jasper, Lucas Jensen, Joanna Berry, and Jason Wolf. During the public hearing, for members of the public, if you wish to speak on any cases that we're hearing tonight, you'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak. Staff will assist with any as necessary to help us keep that time. I'm going to read through the agenda for today. And the first items that I will be mentioning will be on our consent agenda. If there's anyone here tonight that wishes to hear one of those items, wishes to speak on one of those items, please get my attention and we will pull that from the consent agenda and actually hear that case. So I'll walk through these real quick. So the first one, the first item on our agenda is the Development Review Commission study session and regular meeting minutes from December 12th, 2023. Then we will have our consent agenda. Our consent agenda consists of item number 2, Kaya Coffee and Taco Cart. Was anybody here wishing to hear that one tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll keep that on the consent agenda. Item number 3, Take 5 Oil Change Tempe. Please get my attention if you wanted to hear that one. Okay, item number 4, Kids Empire. Okay, you're the applicant, I don't see anyone wishing to speak to that. Otherwise, we'll keep it on the consent agenda, which will go with, will be approved through a consent vote. Item number 5 is TLC Massage, which will also be on our consent agenda. Anyone wishing to hear that? Great. So that consists of our consent agenda. Item number 6 will be heard, 1020 Apache. And then we will have commission member announcements and city staff announcements. Okay, so let's get going on item number 1, which is our Development Review Commission study session and regular meeting minutes from December 12th, 2023. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion for approval of item 1, Commission study session, Commission regular meeting of 12/12/23.
Okay, motion moved by Commissioner Casano. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lloyd seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, and that passes unanimously. All right, item number 2 is our second item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
Move approval of the consent agenda as read.
Oops.
I'm sorry. Move approval of the consent agenda as read.
Okay, a motion has been moved by Commissioner Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Casano seconds. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, that motion passes unanimously as well. Okay, moving right along, item number 6, 1020 Apache, PL 230262. I'd like to invite the applicant up for a presentation. Looks like we have Manjula Vaz coming.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For your record, my name is Manjula Vaz, law firm of Gamage and Burnham. I'm here today to talk about 1020 Apache. I'm here today on behalf of LV Collective. With me is Chris Johnson from LV Collective, and then Allison Rainey from Sheffley Bullfinch, who is our architect, and we'll have her come down and talk a little bit about the design. We appreciate your time. I'm just going to do a quick presentation, then we're happy to answer any questions. Just want to give you a little sense of LV and the design that they have done in some other communities. They have built high-rise typically, and that we have shown here, similar to what we're doing. The Moon Tower, I think, is just opened down in the Roosevelt District if you're down in downtown Phoenix. So you can see the Moon Tower. They've built similar projects in in Austin, and then in Atlanta. And what you see down there is a very active kind of pedestrian area, which you'll see a lot of the same type of images that I'm going to show you at 1020. And then certainly kind of the openness in the ground floor. And what we are doing, student housing, the cafe lobby area is very similar to kind of what you see here. Hospitality, we had our neighborhood meeting at the Moxie across the street, and our lobby area is very similar to the Moxie. You kind of walk in, they have kind of co-working space, they have a nice bar, you check in, so you'll kind of see that as you walk through this. Again, some more pictures of the type of architecture we do and type of structure, kind of what we look for in terms of design, just to kind of give you a sense of what LV has done. The sign itself, I think everybody knows, the north side of Apache, it's 1020. It's between two student housing developments already. One is called now, it used to be called the Rise, now Carmen, and then the other is called, I think, the Apollo. But anyway, it's currently a Super 8 motel, as you will see here, surrounding uses. Our request is to do a zoning map amendment to rezone from commercial shopping center CSS and TOD to MU4 TOD, as you will see, that matches the adjacent areas around Apache, to do a PAD to establish site-specific development standards, and then design review for the building site. So what you see is the current zoning map at CSS. You can do MU4 PAD, which is very similar to the adjacent properties. You have the general plan and designated as M as mixed use. And the general plan projected density is, I think it's up to 65 for 2040. And then I believe it's greater than 65 for 2050. Yeah, which is what kind of where we are. So just to talk a little bit about the building, it's a 15-story building. As you can see, the building, the Rise next to the Carbon next to it is about 14, 15 stories. We have 289 purpose-built student housing units, 36 studios, 36 one-bedrooms, 47 twos, 17 threes, and 153 fours. We have a little more than 2,100 square feet of flex restaurant retail space at the street level, which we can talk a little bit about. We also have a 6,800 square foot lobby. We have a lot of amenities, as you've seen in some of these buildings, co-work, club room, yoga studios, they're all kind of internal. We have a parking garage that has EV charging stations, EV spaces, and then compact spaces, and then on-street parking spaces. We've spent a lot of time, we really want to thank Diana and Ryan for all their help in terms of kind of, it's a thin site. If you remember, it's thin and long, just in terms of kind of what's happening on Apache, making sure we work with our adjacent neighbors, and obviously the drop-offs and for those of you who, I'm sure we've all driven on Apache and live too far away, there's a lot of things going on in Apache, especially here. So just make sure we're cognizant of the pedestrian experience as well as the vehicular experience. So I'm going to have Allison talk a little bit more about this in a second, but I do want to kind of go through a couple of things. One thing that we really spent a lot of time with, both on the staff level And from our end, is talked about the landscaping, the adjacent landscaping around it, and I want to show you a little bit about the landscaping and the shading on Apache to make sure. Let me. You want me to stop? Good, I can stop, Jason. All right. Okay, so just to make sure that we have kind of had the trees and the shading that we were trying to get to on Apache, we'll talk about this in a second. The one thing I just want to go through a couple of designs a little bit, show you something. We spent a lot of time, I've talked to both Phil Amorosi and Matt. We've been to CVAC a couple of times, had a neighborhood meeting. What you'll see in this design, just a little bit, and I'll have Allison talk more about it, but we tried to make sure that we're respectful of our neighbors. So you see kind of our height on our west side is adjacent to the rise. It's similar in height. And then we've stepped down and opened it so that our east side height along Apache is similar to what's on our east side. So we kind of work through making sure that we manage both of our neighbors. And so you don't see how just one big block on Apache, but we have a lot of openness and articulation and kind of that compatibility with our neighbors. And you can kind of see this here. I'll have Allison talk a little bit more about it. And then I think you've seen our material boards, just in terms of the type of quality materials to make sure that this is a very high quality kind of both high-end residential, hospitality looking building. And you can kind of see the open coffee store that's very similar to kind of the buildings that we had shown you earlier. And then the one thing, and Allison's going to talk more about this here, again, just in terms of landscaping, you kind of see what we're trying to project on Apache. You can also see that Diana was really, and Ryan were very open about in terms of making sure we had the right type of materials on the ground level that felt, that looked good and that will withstand the test of time. And I wanted to talk about this. We talked to Phil and Matt a lot about it's kind of, as we used to do a lot of conversion plans. I think that was part of the deal. It's like, what could this, Matt, from the CVAC side, they wanted to make sure that if this became something, it could be a residential unit, it doesn't always have to be student housing. What does that conversion plan look like? So we had done a couple of, how you convert a 4-bedroom unit to a 2-bedroom unit. We talked about how you manage the balcony, so we could do that in the future. So just kind of thinking through future-proofing the building and what else it could be. So I will have Allison come down and talk a little bit about the design and the layout, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mandela, and good evening. I'm Allison Rainey with Shepley Bullfinch, principal and architect. So Mandela did a great job giving you an overview of what to expect with this project, but we'll just take a quick look here. And as noted, we have an infill site. It's pretty narrow. And so we've taken a look at how to organize the program on the site here. So towards the street is all of the public functions, the very visible and accessible active spaces. And then as you move further into the site, you get more private spaces, the parking, the building service, and access points. Diving in a little closer on the ground floor level, you can see how the program is a little bit better organized here, where you see the on-street parking, the loading right off of Apache. Then we have that sidewalk that's activated by the outdoor dining for the cafe proposed use. The lobby and leasing spaces, or leasing office, are also accessed off of the sidewalk and both from the back parking. And then as you move further north into the building, you see the parking, the secured parking, bicycle parking, all the utilities. Then looking up here at the second level, the co-working space was mentioned. We have a 2-story, basically, lobby area where the co-working space is located on the second floor and overlooks into that lobby space below. And so you have a lot of activity that's visible from Apache Boulevard, with then parking tucked and kind of hidden behind this programmable and active space. There are 2 main amenity exterior decks in this project, level 5 and level 14. This is level 5, and so there's a pool with a larger seating areas, some shaded landscaping, planted areas oriented towards Apache, and then there are smaller, more intimate gathering and seating areas within the courtyard. Okay. And then up here on level 14, we're taking advantage of the views that this pool deck will be afforded all around the different mountain ranges. And this pool deck is also connected to an additional amenity and spaces on the interior where we have their wellness program, the two-story fitness center, the yoga, the club room, and kind of group studies that Manjula mentioned as well. So looking a little bit at the massing, again, we're taking into consideration what's existing on site, and so the height of this building is taller on the west side as it is next to the Carmen, which shares a similar height, and then it steps down as it moves to the east where the Apollo is. And the broadest, sort of longest facade of the building is pushed back from Apache to give some relief along the boulevard there. So you can see that a little bit better here where the massing of the building is pushed back, and that allows for some relief again along Apache, and then also makes way for the amenity spaces. Looking at that streetscape a little bit, here you start to see some of the materials that we're using. We're activating the ground plane with the coffee shop that's open to the public in the lobby, and you start to get a sense of the materials that we would be including in the design here. A little bit closer look at the entrance to the main lobby, the residential entrance, and entrance to the leasing space. Get a sense of, again, the tactile nature and the high touch quality materials that we use at the pedestrian areas, integrated lighting, integrated planting to make it a really welcoming environment. This is a distinct entry into the cafe, and so there's different qualities of spaces that you're entering here. And so here there's warm materials. You can see the outdoor dining is open to the sidewalk, but yet it has a defined perimeter. Looking from the other corner where we have the vehicular access to the project, we paid a lot of attention to understanding the traffic flows of both pedestrian, bicycles, and vehicles, and worked to move the columns back into the space more to allow for more visibility and promote safety. The view of the sidewalk where we are taking advantage of both sides, planting both sides of the sidewalk as possible on the street side. From the north view, looking at breaking down larger elevations with a change of plane, change of materials, wrapping the corners, and that is also taken around the side to the east side as well. Our material palette, so it's composed of pretty durable, really desert-appropriate materials. We have 2 different kinds of brick that we're working with in terms of the way that it lays out on the building, some metal and glass, and some nice, really warm colors. Manjula mentioned we were working on the floor plans to understand how they could be converted to some other use in the future, should that be a need. And so the strategy of laying units out consists of putting the plumbing and the services and all of those towards the interior building corridor, so that there provides more flexibility with what you can do at the exterior. So in this case, we're suggesting that a 4-bedroom unit could be converted into 2-bedroom unit with a larger primary room, but then still have some exterior, private exterior space by carving balconies out of the facade. Another look at a different unit, again, another 4-bedroom unit type, but how we could break it down into 2 bedrooms if needed. So this is just consistent with being flexible and also being thoughtful about how the services are planned in the building. Then Manjula also mentioned some of these sustainability features by integrating EV parking, drought-tolerant landscaping, low energy appliances, lots of multimodal opportunities, and then the team is considering the Fitwel certification and integration of solar technologies. So that's the end of what I have to present.
Yeah, with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Any questions? I think we want to hold, oh, do you have some questions?
No,
Commissioner
let's
Miller?
wait until we
Okay.
have staff.
All right, thank you. We'll hear from staff and
Thank you.
may invite you back up.
Thank you.
Ms. Kaminsky. Hello,
Good evening,
good evening.
Chair Johnson, Commissioners. Diana Kaminsky, Senior Planner with Community Development. The request before you is for a project that's converting from a CSS to MU4 zoning within the TOD corridor. They are asking for a PAD in order to establish the development standards for the site. They're asking for 213 dwelling units per acre, 200-foot maximum building height, 78% maximum lot coverage, which is a slight increase from what would be allowed with the CSS zoning, a 22% landscape area, which is a slight decrease from what would be required in CSS. They actually are increasing a couple of the setbacks. Some of that is to accommodate their fire lane and access drive on the east side and to provide some additional landscape on the sides. The vehicle parking is requesting a decrease in parking, and they would be proposing to meet the required parking for bicycles. The area shown in green is showing the landscape area that's on the sides of the project on the ground floor. The tan areas are the entry drives. One of the unique things about the site, because it is so narrow, is the egress on the east side is in only, primarily designed for fire service delivery trucks that would come in on that east side. The main egress for customer service and the residents would be the west drive, so it's a wider drive. In doing that, we were able to narrow that eastern drive and protect pedestrians a little bit from having too much movement both directions across the sidewalks. They are providing a little bit of a landscape buffer to the property to the east. All of their refuse services towards the north end of that eastern side. One of the things that changed in their last iteration of the design was the landscaping along the north side disappeared for a sidewalk. In consulting the other divisions, we determined it was not a direction from anybody in staff. And it's not something that we desire. So that blue area that's shown there, we have a condition of approval to restore that to be landscape with consultation with the SEPTED staff. Very specifically, we would like to have trees back there, no shrubs, no sidewalk, no public access to that area. It would be a secured area with access for maintenance and security only. But that does provide a little bit of a landscape buffer to the residents to the north and softens the edge of the building on the upper floors while still having a secured backyard area. This is their proposed landscape plan. And they went over with much prettier graphics, the color renderings of the landscape on the amenity areas. This is the street front elevations. We did have some concerns along the north side and more on the eastern side with the materiality that would be visible from off-site. What you see here in the lower right corner is what the building would look like from the property to the north with the adjacent existing buildings in place. We had asked for a little more color and material variation on the upper floors. And we did get some of that, but not as much as we had expected on the upper floors. So some of the special conditions that I'll go over at the end of the presentation are to address some of those final details we'd like to see worked out before they get to CDs. Overall, the combination of materials that they've shown, they did give a lot of detail along the street front. We wanted to make sure that we had that four-sided architecture on all sides of the building. These are the floor plans. I'll go through these pretty quickly. There was a neighborhood meeting that I attended at the Moxie. We did have a few residents that provided some great feedback to the applicants, and they took some of those comments into consideration in their further iterations of the design. As of noon today, we have had no, actually, as of 5 o'clock today, we've had no calls or inquiries of concern or questions on the project. So staff is recommending approval of the project subject to conditions. The applicant has reviewed and agreed to the stipulations presented in the report. These are the unique conditions that I have listed here. They need to provide a 55-foot right-of-way along Apache. That was something that was just missed in their final set of plans, but that was something they were noticed on from the beginning, so they are going to be doing that. There was also a change on the parking. We had agreed to one pedestrian loading spot on street for Uber Lyft type of pickups and drop-offs, but not deliveries of truck deliveries to the commercial space. So restaurant deliveries, all the other deliveries need to be done on site. So we're wanting that to only be one parking spot for pedestrian loading and unloading, and then the addition of 3 on-street parking spaces. So there's a condition related to that. These are 2 that are now becoming standard conditions, but they are unique based on each site. They're identified by our historic preservation officer related to archaeologically sensitive properties. You've seen these conditions on a few other projects, but I wanted to draw those to your attention as well. Number 9 is about the loading space. Number 10 is related to that blue area that I showed on the one image for the northern portion to be landscaped rather than sidewalk. There were some conflicts with one of the gates and the location of landscape. They were working on resolving that. Traffic engineering asked for some enhancements on the street front for striping for bicycle lanes and tactile domes at the sidewalk for the driveway entrances. On the elevations, this is specific to the materials and using, well, number 32 is related to signage and pedestrian notification. Number 33 is related to the ground floor in the north elevation, wanting to have more transparency from that back area into the garage, but have it still be secure. This was something the police department asked for, so that if they were in the garage, they could see to that back area where the parking terminates at the north end of the garage into that 5-foot yard to the north. So this is a specific condition that they requested. And then the elevations on the upper floors, floor 5 through 14, was to provide some additional materials and colors to provide more four-sided architecture, and that's with these conditions through 37 or about, as well as 38 related to floors 6 through 15, and then the landscape on the north side specific to the trees and no shrubs on that north side. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Commissioner Miller?
So can we go back to looking at the non-standard conditions of approval? Go back to number 6, please. Let's start there. I know this is becoming sort of a standard thing, and it's just a burr that's under my saddle all the time, but that's okay. You're requiring that they hire a qualified archaeological firm to complete a monitoring and discovering plan, testing, monitoring ground disturbance. Okay. What happens with whatever report or anything they produce?
This gets reviewed by our historic preservation officer. It needs to be signed off on, and anything that occurs through that process, they're in communication with our staff.
I'd like to see that included in there, because otherwise it looks like you hired them. Great, they did it. I guess what I'm looking for is something very specific in terms of this is what we're going to do with this, and this is what happens to it, not just that they did it.
Okay, I can work with management, I think, to address that.
Yeah, we can certainly work on crafting some improved language, but yeah, the intent of the condition is that they work with the city on an acceptable plan, and that results in having a monitoring plan in place so that we know, are there any sensitive areas of the site, the ability to monitor the construction for any ground related disturbance. And then we have professionals, people aware of these areas where, hey, if something is discovered, there's an opportunity to kind of stop the process, evaluate it, and get the proper people in place. And that is a close working relationship with making sure that, one, there's a qualified archaeological firm on board. They work with our historic preservation office. We can certainly tweak some of the language to note that this process requires consent and sign off through the Historic Preservation Office, if that helps improve the language presented.
For me, it would. I understand what you're saying, and I understand that there's always the best of intentions. And best of intentions mean nothing if they're not stated.
Sure.
Because if you don't specify it, that leaves you kind of a fairly large loophole.
Makes sense. And one of our earlier projects that had one of these conditions of approval, We're just looking to file for building safety permits and demolition permits. And kind of the question came up, what do we need to do to complete this step before we complete that building permit process? So,
All right.
good
And
comments.
as long as you're there, don't leave yet, because I got another one. Number 7.
Yes.
It says, maybe this is changed, I should have noted in the permitted. Contractors performing, they'll have to complete this Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community cultural sensitivity training and test. Evidence shall be provided upon request. No. Evidence of completion shall be submitted to the city.
The last part of it, the obligation of this condition shall be noted on the permitted set of
I
plans.
see that, but I also think that it says upon request. Are you going to request it?
What typically has been happening is when they go in for their plan review, the team that is reviewing the plan set makes note of that, and then they contact the historic preservation officer to see if they've received the evidence. So we have communication.
That typically happens, as you just said.
Yeah.
Again, this is one of those best of intents. If you don't specify it, there's no guarantee that
I think
it
we can
happens.
outline that
So they
procedure.
says they will provide evidence.
shall be provided upon request. So rather than upon request, shall be provided to us.
Yeah.
Just taking out the words upon request.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we
'cause
don't
the
have,
first
you don't
sentence
have,
says
so
you
we
have to
don't
do it
have to
already.
request it, they're
They
just
need to
going to
provide
do it.
I think that's.
Makes
we
sense.
can- Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Were there other conditions that you wanted to look at?
Sure, let's go on.
Backwards or forward?
No, you can go forward.
Okay.
The north elevation that you're concerned about, with regard to especially the upper stories, where the coloring is not very unique or it doesn't provide a great deal of interest, it's just pretty flat. Are they going to fix that? Is the intent, I understand, is that you want them to fix it. Is that correct?
Yes, staff did communicate with the applicant a couple times on what we were hoping to see, and we just didn't get that far in the last iteration that they submitted before the hearing. But the specificity of the condition, and I can go back to that elevation, EFS number 3 would be replaced with either the CMU1 or the brick, so it gives them an option of materials to look at on those upper floors. So we tried to call out specific areas to make it a little easier to envision. And likewise, the other colors on the elevations on the east and west side as well.
Can we take a look at I think it's the west elevation? Do you have that? Is that, the west elevation is really kind of drab or pretty flat.
South and north and west. West is the top image there.
Yeah.
So they
But
have,
you can't really see much of it. And then the east and west, if you look down at the bottom left of that page, I think you get a better look at the west elevation.
north, that's the north, the lower side.
Right, but you can also see, what I'm saying is you can also see the west elevation,
Yes.
and it kind of has the same problems as the north does.
The unique thing with the elevation on the west is if you look at the upper drawing, on the right-hand side, that dark area is all brick.
Yeah.
And that's the area that's exposed from when you're looking at it from the street side on Apache. The area to the left of that elevation, everything that's the light gray and the medium gray, is predominantly hidden by the building
Yeah.
to the west. So as a relatively new building, they did show a demarcation of the outline of the adjacent building. And so we looked at that in terms of materiality and what's happening on the adjacent property and felt that their solution on that west side was pretty close to what we'd like to see.
How's their solution on the east?
The east side, we felt needed a little more work because of the height of the building on the east side. There's more exposure. So if you look at this image on the top, I think there was a line shown here. It's hard to see the dashed line. Let's see if I can use Can I use the pointer? No. Okay. You see where the color along the left side of the drawing kind of ends?
Yes.
And there's the stripe, yes, right there. Everything, go a little bit to the right there, yeah. So, and then up slightly, there, whoop, down one.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a dashed line, that represents the building to the east.
Yeah.
So everything above that dashed line is what would be visible. So
Okay.
that's where we wanted to have more color and material on the upper floors.
I think that adding additional material would make it a lot better because you lose all of the, from that side, you lose all the interest on the brick in the front. And if there would be a way for them to extend that up, perhaps.
And that's what the condition we had, let's see.
That'll go on. Yeah, I think you're right. You added that one.
Side, west, okay, number 35 was about the depth of the windows to provide a little more variation in the surface plane. And then number 37 was related to the ephes and the addition of brick on the upper floors.
About how much of that window recess will you actually see? How deep are they going to be?
So if it's a wall width of, let's say, 6 inches, you would
Then
get a
it'd be 3.
3-inch depth. And so that provides a little bit more shading on the windows, and it just provides a little more play in the surface, a textural play, similar to the brick pattern they had in the front elevation, just so that it's not perfectly flat.
That would be a nice solution for that. Now let's ask one other, can I ask one other question? I'm sorry, I was the one who wanted to talk about this.
Please,
Parking.
continue.
Yes.
They have 4.5 floors of parking? Is that how I'm reading that?
Let me see. I thought it was 3. We have the surface parking on level 1, and then there's level 2, level 3, yes, and then up to 4.5 with parking. And it's all wrapped, so there's some screening on the elevations.
Yeah.
So it's the area that's a combination of the brick pattern and some metal grid pattern for ventilation within the garage. And it creates kind of a window pattern, even though they're,
This is proposed as student housing, correct?
yes.
Do they need as much parking as they're going to want, as they're providing? And I know they're providing a lot less than is required.
Yes.
But this is also right on it's the streetcar line and it's on the light rail line.
Yes, and they are asking for a reduction, and they did provide a parking analysis for that. I think some of the concern of neighbors in the area is in the potential conversion of projects in the future to either a market rate apartment or a condominium project. You would still need to have some level of ability to provide parking as a market rate product. So there was concern expressed from the neighbors that they wanted the product to not just function as a student project forever. If the market changes for student housing, they wanted it to be translatable to other modes. So this provides a decrease in the parking ratio that's required for housing, and we don't specify between student or non-student. So that provides more flexibility, but still provides a reduction.
And I understand that, and I think it actually is a good point. But if we're also trying to encourage getting people out of their cars, getting people to use other modes of transportation, one way to do that would be to reduce the parking that's provided. And you've got other alternative transportation modes right there. It just seems to me that you could also reduce the building height by a story or two, which wouldn't be a bad thing either, because we're getting this creeping movement of very tall buildings away from the downtown urban core and moving them out further and further away from that. And so maybe if we reduce the height a little bit and reduce the parking, or conversely put it underground, which would also be a solution, you could solve a couple of things and maybe increase the ridership of the transportation system as well. Would they be amenable to looking at something like that?
That's a question you'll have to ask.
Well, I'm posing it out there and they can.
Yeah. So,
Do you want me to answer the question?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Miller, I take your point. I totally appreciate it. we are not amenable right now to changing. We've spent a year kind of getting us this far. I completely understand what you're talking about in terms of parking. In terms of height, I agree and understand what you're saying. I mean, we tried to match the height to kind of the height that's certainly in the area. It's not out of proportion to the height in the area. So from our perspective, given where we are right now, we probably politely decline to make the changes to the height, but appreciate the comments. And we're happy to continue to discuss parking with you. We'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss more parking and decreasing our parking. You can help us then.
All right. Well, I appreciate your at least willingness to talk about it.
No, absolutely. Always happy to talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Kaminsky. Additional, or did you have anything else, Commissioner Miller?
No, I'm going to shut up.
Are you sure? Okay. Going once. Commissioner Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. I should know the answer to this question, but I'm curious. There's like 45 conditions. That seems like a lot. Is this fully baked enough to actually bring it forward? Because it feels like, not knowing where the trash enclosures are going to be, or loading and unloading for the commercial space. Are there things that should be more fully addressed before we approve it?
No, in this case, they went through multiple reviews in site plan review, and then there were changes that were made at the last review, like the loading bays on the street front changed, adding 2 instead of 1, and the sidewalk along the, so there were things that changed in the drawings that was kind of like, well, we hadn't seen that before, so the option was to have them redraw it to what we were looking for or put in conditions. And in this case, those are relatively minor things. The elevation things, if we were not able to clearly define it by condition, where it was just too ambiguous, but in this case we were so close, we just didn't quite get the nail finished. That was why we felt it was appropriate to bring it forward, just having the conditions to address those last minute things that we needed to.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Tom?
Is the applicant agreeing with the conditions?
Yes, I went over them with them last
Perfect.
week. Yes.
Thank you.
And then I have a question. So all the conditions that you presented tonight are the same that are in the staff proposal?
Yes, there's
Or
no
the staff report,
changes.
excuse me. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And condition number 5, and that's the only one I'm going to talk about, I promise. Oh, you're on it. Okay, thank you. Oh, no, sorry. The one related to the setback. I thought it was number 5.
Setback.
Uh-oh.
12? 5-foot north rear setback,
No, sorry.
the 55-foot right of way?
That's the 55-foot right-of-way, yes. Which one was that?
Number 4.
Oh, number 4. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Does that change the footprint or anything related to the
No.
design of the front of that building?
No, so it's
Okay.
kind of an unusual situation on this particular lot. If you look at the, oops, wrong floor plan, let's see. Okay, in the lower left corner, right by where the arrow is for the exit, that little dashed line that kind of pops out towards the street, there's just one little section of their street frontage that's not 55. And so we had a note that they needed to dedicate that 55-foot right-of-way, and the note was not picked up when they made their revisions. So they're aware of it. It doesn't affect the footprint of the building or any of their design. It's a dashed line that didn't get moved, so we wanted to make sure it was codified by a condition.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Thank you. All right, I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will open it up for public citizen input or comments. Was there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this project? Okay, seeing none, does the applicant wish to have any additional responses, or there was no public comment, but I want to offer you up one more
No,
opportunity.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, I appreciate your time. And as Diana said, we do agree with all the commissions. And as I mentioned, Diana's been very thorough during this process, so we appreciate all of her help. And some of these, little things not getting hit, picked up happened because of the holidays. I mean, the holidays happened, and then just, when you have to get plans back kind of 6 weeks ahead of time, and Christmas and vacation. So we apologize for some of the things that didn't get picked up, and we appreciate Diana's kind of commitment to making the conditions work. But we agree with everything she's done, so we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I ask a question about?
Sure, Commissioner Miller?
The two conditions, 6 and 7, that were to be modified, are you good with those?
Yes, I'm fine with yours, Commissioner Miller. We'll be doing that. We've already spoken with Logan Simpson, so we're moving forward. No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That closes the public hearing. So now it is commission discussion. I think if we'll need to come up with some language for the changes to conditions number 6 and 7, if that's what the commission, if we all are in agreement on that. Okay. Any objections to those? Okay. So I think item number 7 is pretty simple to address. Yes, Ms. Kaminsky.
And number 7, I think we've discussed striking upon request.
Right.
Number 6, I think we could add another sentence that said the plan shall be submitted to the Historic Preservation Officer for review and approval.
When we discussed it, I wrote down process requires consultation and sign off with Historic Preservation Officer.
I like the sound of that. Does that sound all right, Commissioner Miller?
Yes, as far as it goes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So was there any other discussion from the commission? Is there a motion? Willing to entertain a motion? Anybody?
I'll motion to approve.
Commissioner Forte?
Motion to approve agenda item 6.
PL 230262
That's what I was looking for. Yes,
with the conditions.
with the conditions
Modified.
of modified 4 and 5.
5 and
5 and
6.
6.
Sorry, 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
We're having trouble with these
Swing and a
conditions.
miss.
Can you restate that real quick? Let's make sure we're on the same page.
Trying to find the. So I motion to approve PL 230262 with an inclusion of process requires consent sign off with historic. Preservation officer for number 6 and strike upon request for number 7.
And replace by submission to a development review, whatever, instead of upon request by.
Yeah,
submission.
microphone.
Here, let me just see it real quick.
I think that was
Yeah.
striked off
Okay.
so that it.
You take off upon request, actually upon request by, and then just put it,
Should be
replace that with
provided
submit
to
to.
the community.
Yeah.
Take off, remove upon request by, and add to. We'll get this.
Should I
We'll
say
get
this
it.
again?
Did we,
I can go through this again.
is everybody clear on that? Let's see. Item number, yeah, just clarify condition 7, which I think we've done.
Condition number 6 with an added sentence. Oh, I thought we were good with number
So
6.
we got number 6.
This is number 7.
shall be provided to
Evidence should be provided to the Community Development Department Historic Preservation Officer.
That's how it will be read. Okay, there is a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Schwartz. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, any opposed? And that passes with 6 in favor and opposed by Commissioner Miller. All right. That rounds out the majority of our agenda tonight. Next on the agenda is any commissioner member announcements. Commissioner Forte, let's hear it.
Keep Tempe Beautiful is doing their first event with alley cleanups with Keep Tempe Beautiful this Saturday at Sala Park from 8 to 11 a.m. Love to have everyone join.
Awesome, thank you. All right, city staff announcements. Ms. Pankowitz?
I do not have any announcements.
Okay. All right, excellent. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and Happy New Year.